Hello, everyone. It's Matt Murray here with the Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium. Thank you for joining us today as we kick off the theme for the month of June, pollinators. Along with the live stream we also do each week, we also offer a really cool free virtual scavenger hunt app you can play right at home and a new activity guide each month. To download the app and explore all of this, go to www.wondersofwildlife.org/mission-conservation. This address takes you to our Mission Conservation webpage. On this page, I'll bring you over to the box that says, Get the app, and click the download button and follow the instructions. Once you have the app downloaded, create a user account and log in. Hit the search bar and type in Mission Conservation. This is where all of our at-home missions will pop up for you to play. The last place that I'll bring your attention to on this page is Schedule of Missions and Activities. This section will show you all of the missions that are live, including our current mission, Pollinators. This tab will you also find our activity guide that we have made for you at home. This activity guide has a craft, a fun outdoor activity, and something that you can do to help out the pollinators. So behind me is the John A. and Jenny Morris Conservation Center that is connected to the Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium here. Here to talk to us today about pollinators is Katie and Amber with the Springfield Botanical Gardens located here in Springfield, Missouri. How are you doing today, Katie and Amber?
We're doing great. Can you hear us okay now?
So sounds like you're a little echoey.
There, you're good. All right, is that a little bit better?
Great.
Can you hear us now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the Springfield Botanical Gardens. We have just a little bit of an introduction about what botanical gardens are all about and why are we such experts on butterflies. So do we have our slideshow up here yet? So what we're going to talk a little bit about today with our here at the Springfield Botanical Gardens is what is a botanical garden? Basically, it's collections of plants from all over the world. It's also a safe place to keep plants. We have several collections that were preserved from rescues of plants that were endangered of losing their natural habitat. But we have kind of this really special connection with the wildlife as well. So if you want to go ahead and advance to the next slide. All right. So what we're going to talk today is just about what is a botanical garden and why are plants important. But we're also going to talk about what is pollination. And then we have a special focus on butterflies from the Roston Native Butterfly House. Okay, next slide. So what is a botanical garden? Well, we're really just kind of a special place to do collections of plants from all over the world. Like I mentioned, it's a place, a safe place for plants, but we also have lots of different learning opportunities, whether you see the plant names out in the gardens, there's QR codes that can take you to even more information. A lot of people just enjoy us as a big, beautiful park. Here in Springfield, we have about 112 acres of gardens and trails that connect you with all kinds of plants from all over the world and show you different cultures like our Japanese garden and our English garden, and then special collections like our hostas and daylilies. Okay, let's move to the next slide. So we all know that plants need sunlight, water, the carbon dioxide that we're breathing out, and the soil and the nutrients, but they also need horticulturists. And that's one of the jobs that you would have at a botanical garden. A horticulturist is someone that can know even just a little bit more about plants. that we're often diagnosing diseases, insect problems. We're looking at soil structure and why plants might not be performing at their optimum level. We also consider the climate, and we're also learning ways to propagate plants so we can have more plants. And we also think about them as a beautiful place to visit. So we arrange them in an artistic way. So that's just another career option that's out there. Okay, we're ready for the next slide. So why are plants important? A lot of us know that the oxygen that we're breathing is coming from the plants. They're removing the carbon dioxide from the air, which also helps with the greenhouse effect and cools our climate. It controls floods, erosion. We also need plants for food and medicine and clothing, the shelter and the furniture, for fuel and heat energy, even basic things like paper, are just a few things that we really need plants in our life. Okay, next slide. So the idea that people need pollinators too, because so many of our plants are requiring a pollinator. In fact, about 75% of the principal food crops that we depend on rely on a pollinator to help them reproduce. Another way to think about it for us is that 1 out of 3 bites requires a pollinator, and 90% of human nutrition is coming from plants. So let's move on to the next slide. So our pollinators mean lots of different things. Bees, beetles, butterflies, hummingbirds, other small mammals are basically doing the work for plants to help them reproduce. And we can take a closer look on the next slide, where basically one of these animals is taking the pollen from the anther part of the flower and moving it to the pistil. And that is where, when the pollen travels down that tube and can fertilize one of the eggs, that is when the seeds and the fruits start to form. Okay, we can move to the next slide. So pollinators, especially butterflies, have a really special relationship with plants, that they need a certain group of plants to feed their young, the caterpillars, but then the adults also need the nectar and the pollen for the protein and the energy for them to complete their life cycle. So we can move to the next one. So here at the Roston Native Butterfly House, the story that we really like to share with our visitors is that pollinators are in decline. If this looks like a neighborhood that you're familiar with, it's not too unlike of what it looks like around Springfield, that there's lots of houses built very close together. Maybe the plants aren't native or local to this area, so the animals or the wildlife is not familiar. So what we try to do here at our Native Butterfly House is to show that really important relationship that pollinators have with our plants, whether it's the larva food or the adult nectar food, and really encourage people to transform their entire landscapes to really help feed these pollinators. That will also be helping our crops just a few miles outside of the city. Okay, next slide. So here's just a kind of a glimpse of what humans can do for pollinators, is that plant a wide variety of plants. Be able to tolerate some weeds. We'll take a closer look at some of things that where daffodils and or dandelions and violets might be considered a weed to some. They're actually considered a host plant for a lot of our important butterflies that we see here in our Native Butterfly House. To maintain a habitat that's happy for native bees, if you can limit the amount of areas that you mow, create meadows, even houses for mason bees, and also limiting the amount of pesticides that you have, you'll really be able to improve the habitat for our pollinators. Okay, I think we're ready. Just so here's a quick glimpse of where we are in Springfield, Missouri. I know we've got people tuning in from all over the world, but the Springfield Botanical Gardens is located in Springfield, Missouri, and our Native Butterfly House is open from about mid-May to September. We're open from about 10 to 6 daily, weather permitting, and it's all run by volunteers. All right. So I wanted to give you a chance. All right, so here we are outside of the Roston Native Butterfly House. This is an unusually cool and kind of, so we'll have to really look carefully for the wildlife that we'll see in this house. Luckily, we have a wildlife biologist. His name is Hayes, and he is our butterfly expert. So he'll be helping share the story of our native butterfly house. Let's go take a look. When I say native butterflies, I'm referring to butterflies that occur naturally or locally here in the Springfield area. They are really, really enjoy sunny summer weather. That's why we're open from about mid-May to September. And as I mentioned, it's kind of cool and cloudy today. Butterflies need about temperatures of 80 degrees to be warm enough for them to fly around. So we might see a few flying around, but we'll see a lot of them kind of in a resting state. I see a giant swallowtail here on an elm leaf. If we look high up in the nets, you'll see a lot of them are just roosting or resting. Our butterflies are ones that rest with their wings folded shut. We'll get a chance to see some moths here in a little bit. Here's some regal fritillaries, I believe. Is that?
They're a fritillary. It's a great spangled.
He's corrected me. Those are the great spangled fritillaries, resting on the pawpaw leaves. If you've ever been to a tropical butterfly house, you might see an emerge case where the chrysalises that have been brought in from foreign countries are a place that the adults emerge from. But here we have the whole life cycle happening. So you'll see the adults mating and laying eggs here in the house. We also have lots of food for the caterpillars. So, you know, this might be, you might think of this butterfly house as looking a little weedy, but that's really true for a lot of our butterflies, is they like tall, tall trees and lots of weeds because they produce lots of leaves that the caterpillars need in order for them to get to that adult stage. Do we have any eggs in the house? Do you know, Hayes?
Okay, so it's probably not look like much. Let's make sure it is. Yes, this is an egg. A giant swallowtail egg. And so I know this because it is on a wafer ash tree, which is a host plant for the giant swallowtail. And so if you believe me, this little dot is that butterfly we saw right here. Same thing, just a little different. But yeah, that's how small they started out. And so if this is a mama here on my shirt, she can lay upwards of 500 of these little eggs. And they say that if you're lucky, 5 of those 500 will make it to an adult butterfly outside. So it's kind of a hard life for a butterfly, but in here, they at least don't got to worry about birds.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a really great story to kind of share. That's, you know, we need pollinators, but a lot of the other wildlife that we see in our landscapes, like the wild birds, you think about just one net of chickadees need about 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars in order for them to reach their adult stage. So if you can imagine how many caterpillars has to be in our environment. So it really is important that we match up our plants to be able to serve that whole environment ecosystem. So what else do we have here in the house? Looks like we've got some monarchs eating a common milkweed leaf. These are maybe about the second instar, and that's a term that we refer to as caterpillars. As they grow, they don't have a skeleton. They're whenever they grow, they have to shed their skin 5 times before they shed their skin for the last time to become that chrysalis stage. Here are some black swallowtails. Look like they're eating a little bit of the golden Alexander, which you can find in the wild, but they also will eat fennel and dill and parsley. So it's a really easy caterpillar to raise in your own yard because a lot of these plants are available at your local nurseries. So you can plant these plants and the adults will know to lay their eggs on them so the caterpillars have something to eat.
And if you're growing the herbs, a lot of people will classify this black swallowtail as a pest. But it's just kind of different mentalities. If you're a farmer and you're growing crop, you don't want the bugs eating your plants, but the golden Alexanders are a real good substitute because we don't eat it, just the caterpillar does. The other herbs are kind of just naturalized native plants. But did we see these little guys? Got a small little hatch of pipevine swallowtails. And so it's another native. The vine, the leaf you're seeing is a pipevine or a Dutchman's pipevine. And that's all they're going to eat. So if you don't have Dutchman's pipevine, you ain't going to see these little pretty caterpillars or the black and blue butterfly that it turned into.
Now the swallowtails are really interesting about some of their defenses. Hayes, can you show and tell what a swallowtail might do?
Yeah, let's see. These big ones will probably be the easiest to pester. And so if I try to act like a bird or something, try to kind of, I'm not squeezing, boom. You see that? Little orange things. And if you could smell through that camera, it's got a real fruity type smell. Look, this one did it real good. So I'm a bird and I'm pecking it, trying to eat it. And this thing, it's called a stinkhorn or an osmoterium. And it releases a chemical. It really, some of them smell better than others. These guys really smell good. It smells like fruit or some kind of juice. And they spray that and it kind of acts as pepper spray to the birds. So yeah, the swallowtail's got kind of cool defenses like that. Whereas monarch over here is just relying on eating toxic plants. And the birds don't necessarily know that always, but it helps for the monarch not to get eaten as much. And these other ones are red, spotted purple caterpillar, and they'll eat willow, a couple other trees. But they got kind of honest horns, or their caterpillar looks like they got some kind of horn to their head.
Yeah, I think that's one of the defense mechanisms that a lot of our caterpillars have. As we mentioned earlier, that really just 1% or a very small fraction actually make it to adulthood. So some birds know that those warning colors of black and yellow and orange often say, stay away, I'm dangerous. And there'll be some butterflies that kind of mimic those same colors. And then there's some like the red spotted purple that kind of look like a branch or maybe even a bird dropping, so that the birds don't even try to taste that.
It's not a great one to see.
So we're looking at some beautiful jewels. The chrysalis, the in-between stage between the larval and adult stage of the butterflies. These are monarchs. They have, a lot of them have that little bit of gold. That's where that Latin name comes from.
I'm gonna try to argue.
And here's a closer look at one of their largest moths. So even though we're a butterfly house, we kind of celebrate all Lepidoptera here. You know it's a moth because its wings are open wide. Today is kind of a tricky day because even the butterflies are resting, but usually a moth rests all day long and only flies at night. A moth has a very short lifespan. Most of these do not have feeding mouth parts that allow them to eat while they're adults. They do all their eating as caterpillars. And they also make a really special cocoon. We've mentioned the word chrysalis several times, and that's what butterflies do, but a moth is more typical to build a cocoon around its chrysalis. So if you see those, what looks almost like a furry pod or something really just foreign, that's actually inside is that same chrysalis. And when the adults are ready, they'll tear or chew a little hole in that leaf pouch and silk, and these adults will emerge. You can really kind of get a close look at the proboscis, or the feeding part of this giant swallowtail. Not many of them are eating right now because it is so cool in the house. So let's take a look at some of the other things that there is to see in here. There's lots of different flower shapes as we start to look around the gardens. We mentioned the golden Alexander, and the parsley and fennel and dill has kind of this umbel type flower, and then the milkweeds are just now starting to open, and it's such a beautiful fragrant flower. You can really see how the monarch caterpillars blend in with the veins and hide underneath the leaves. So they really try to protect themselves. Our house is made with a hailcloth. So this is kind of a nursery product that a lot of greenhouses use to protect their plants from hail. But it's, for us, it's just something that's puts enough air and water in to keep our plants alive, but keeps the birds and other critters that might eat the butterflies or caterpillars. Now, being such a really cool day, I don't know if we'll see many of these chrysalises or the adults emerge, but you can see how they start to almost turn clear. They can go from almost a brown or green color, but when you start to make the outlines of the leaf patterns, you can really start to see that there is an adult butterfly inside. And again, these probably need about 80 degrees temperature and just a little bit more sunlight for the adults to merge. They move out really, really quickly. And what they have to do is hang upside down, and they pump their bodies to expand their wings. And they have just a short period of time to make sure that their wings dry nice and straight. You see, this guy was a little bit wrinkly, and I don't know if it's just the humidity or if he may have fallen in his process of coming out of the chrysalis. I think he will be able to fly. He's just still trying to dry his wings good enough. Sometimes it may take as many as 3 hours to really get dry enough to fly. So this is a really vulnerable time in a butterfly's life, is just coming out of that chrysalis and getting ready to fly again. Let's see here. I'm gonna do want to try and talk about more of the plants that we have in our butterfly house. We can take a little bit of a garden tour here. I can see some leaf munching here on the pawpaw tree. This is kind of one of the a tropical, almost a tropical tasting fruit. You can see the flower is very unusual. It almost looks like almost like meat. In fact, I think it's a fly that does a lot of the pollinating here. And we're just starting to see the development of some fruit too. So probably about September, we'll start to see these develop. But this is a very important plant for the zebra swallowtail. So we call it zebra swallowtail because it's black and white, striped like a zebra, even in the caterpillar stage. And then as it becomes an adult, it has the same black and white stripes. I think of them as kind of an early season spring butterfly, but we really only see those in places where the pawpaw trees are most evident. In our butterfly house, we've got food for the adults and also food for the caterpillar. So here's to check out some of our favorite adult foods that a lot of our gardeners really tune into. We got very our butterflies. There are some flies that get nectar from flowers, but sometimes the fruit is just as good to get the nutrients that they need. In fact, butterflies need more than just nectar. If we all just lived on sugar water, we wouldn't be very healthy. So the minerals and salts that might be in fruit or bird droppings are some of the things that we also showcase here. So we've got some cherries and oranges on display. Some of the ornamental plants for those gardeners looking to bring adults in. We had a look at some pentas, which are kind of a star-shaped flower, and then the salvias. A lot of these are long blooming plants that will be in bloom for many, many months. They have a nice flat landing area and kind of a tubular shaped flower for those butterflies to put their proboscis down into and get that nectar. And while they're getting that little treat from the plants, they're also getting the pollen moved around so we can see the fruits and the seeds forming. Okay, so it looks like we're just about to wrap up on our visit to the butterfly house. Let's see here. Is there anything else that we should really kind of zoom in on? We've got this really fun plant called the popcorn plant. When you actually leaves, it smells like very popcorn, but it's a host plant for the yellow sulfur butterflies. I hope you guys had a great time here at our native butterfly house, and I hope you come to join us on a sunny day when there's lots of activity and lots of critters moving around. I think, do we want to go ahead and turn it back over to Matt?
Okay.
Oh, Matt is having technical issues. So we can kind of keep looking at some of the flowers and let's see what else we can see. Here is a purple coneflower, the echinacea. And I think there's a couple of butterflies that will use that as a host plant, but it's a wonderful nectar plant and great for a lot of our birds that like to eat seeds. Lantanas are a tropical kind of garden plant. The adult butterflies really love to get a lot of the nectar from. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoy learning more about pollinators in the rest of your visits throughout the month of June. Oh, there was a question. Do you release the butterflies or do they live there the whole time in the house? And that's a very good question. In fact, most of our butterflies only live about 2 to 4 weeks, so they can go through up to 5 generations in one growing season. A lot of times they will go dormant and stay in that chrysalis stage through until almost the next season. And we have volunteers that preserve them and kind of keep them in a static environment for many months before they come back to the butterfly house. But for the most part, they live their whole lives here in the butterfly house, and there's plenty of food for them to reproduce and do their entire life cycle here, from egg to caterpillar to chrysalis to adult. How many visitors do we have per year? I think we have about 40,000 visitors. It's a free butterfly house. And let's see here. It looks like we're just going to give you a little bit more information of where you can find us again. I think Kendra's going to bring up that last slideshow of our address. So if you want to come see us, and thank you all for coming. Goodbye.
All right, can you hear me?
Sure can.
All right, well, thank you so much for talking to us about the importance of pollinators and what the Springfield Botanical Gardens is doing to help them. As we bring this live stream to a close, we want to thank you for tuning in today, and we hope to tune in next Tuesday, as we will be partnering with Elena Larkin with the Fish and Wildlife Service at 1 p.m. Central Time. Don't forget to tune in, and remember, we all live downstream. We'll see you then.